Hello and welcome to the Global Dialogue. I'm Shireen Bhan, and it is our pleasure to welcome on the show the Global CEO of Novartis, Vasant Narasimhan. Vas, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC-TV18. It's great to have you here in India.
Great to be here, Shireen. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Well, since you are here in India, let's start by talking to you about the plans that Novartis has for India. You've got a fairly large presence in Hyderabad, development center, one of the three that you globally have. What's the plan now in terms of expanding capacity and capability there?
You know, over the years, actually now since 2005, we've been able to build an over 10,000 strong presence in India, both with our Indian business, but also with this corporate center where we cover pretty much all of the key functions within Novartis, ranging from development, research functions, all the way up through our advanced analytics, AI, and other capabilities. We plan to continue to invest and expand. I mean, we think that Hyderabad is an incredible location for talent. And so for us as a corporate center, India has become a really key location.
So what will that mean in terms of incremental investments over the next 5 years?
Well, I think we've already have over $300 million we generate, we believe, for the Indian economy in terms of investments. And I think we'll continue to invest, probably not a specific figure, but I would see continued expansion in that facility. I mean, when you look at it over the years, we've gone from 1,000 to 5,000 to 7,000. Now we're over 9,000. And we continue to look to bring more things into our Hyderabad location.
On the manufacturing side, is there an aspiration to beef up capability and expand on the manufacturing side as well?
We already have one manufacturing center here in our Sandoz business. I think beyond that, where we really focus right now is what we call our technical development capabilities. So a lot of our technical operations where we do a lot of the drug chemistry, some of the other things, that's what we do right now in Hyderabad. I think longer terms in terms of manufacturing, we're not in need of more capacity at the moment.
Let me talk to you about what we can expect as far as the portfolio in India specifically is concerned. You've already divested some of your drugs here to JB Chemicals, Dr. Reddy's. Is that likely to be something that you continue to do? And in terms of the global pipeline, what will you bring to India?
When you think about our Indian story, it parallels our global story. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell the longer history of Novartis. I mean, we started out as a chemistry company, a dye-making company. So our relationships with India go back to the 1800s. And then really formative relationships in pharmaceuticals starting in the 1940s. You know, since that time, we've evolved from a healthcare conglomerate. And then over the last 5 years, with $100 billion of transactions, transformed into a pure-play innovative medicines company, where we really try to be at the leading edge in 5 therapeutic areas, places like cardiovascular disease, cancer, neurological disease, and then these new technology areas which we think can transform medicine. And we now try to bring that innovation to India consistently and at scale. So some of the things that I think I'm excited about are in cardiovascular disease. We have a drug called Entresto for heart failure. And now we try to bring a drug called Leqvio for high cholesterol. We also have done a lot in immunology with our whole immunology franchise, another area I'm interested in. And probably the big area now is cancer. And how can we be one of the lead partners with India in cancer? The last part of the story, which is probably people don't know as much about, is the amount of work Novartis does in leprosy, malaria, sickle cell disease, diseases that also affect the broader range of the Indian population.
You know, I'm glad that you brought that up, and specifically as far as sickle cell disease is concerned, this is something that made its way into the budget for this year in the finance minister's speech as well. But even on issues like malaria, and I think the concern has been that not enough R&D dollars are going into addressing some of these high disease burden challenges. So give me a roadmap of what we can expect as far as Novartis is concerned.
I mean, Novartis has a long history of investing in tropical diseases. I mean, we just recently committed in the Kigali Declaration in Rwanda, hosted by a range of global leaders, $250 million to continue to invest in research in these areas. Our history goes back actually 30 years in malaria, where we were the company to pioneer a drug called Coartem, which is the most widely used anti-malarial in the world. Now going forward, we have a dedicated R&D center. We're working on novel anti-malarials. Clinical trials are ongoing right now in Africa and India with the idea to get even better treatments for patients with malaria. But then we also work on new diseases. You know, when you think about areas like leishmaniasis, cryptosporidiosis, which is a type of diarrheal disease, and of course sickle cell disease, as we discussed. And I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention that, you know, we are the only supplier, global supplier of drugs to treat leprosy. So our partnerships in leprosy span across India and are really fundamental to our ethos in the country.
So what are the big challenges that you face from an Indian perspective at this point in time? I understand that it's an important strategic market from a capability point of view, and that's what you're hoping to expand on, but not necessarily as a commercial market at this point in time. It's not one of your focus markets. What's the expectation in terms of growth going forward?
You know, there's so much potential here, for sure. And I think as the middle class continues to grow in India, the demand for more healthcare is going to continue to increase. India also has world-class medical centers. When you think about research, development, we're the leading multinational in doing clinical trials in India at the moment. So it's quite significant. I think the challenge now is for India to make the transition from being a primarily generics market to trying to support innovative medicines. And other countries have made that transition, most notably China. China decided to really forcefully look at IP and data protection, start to create a national reimbursement framework, modernize their drug regulator. And as you know, China has a really blossoming biotech sector. I think over the next decade, India can make that transition. And if India makes that transition, I would expect a large biotech sector to also come up here. Also, the diaspora could start to come back as well and really create those companies.
You know, you talked about the diaspora, and this gives me the perfect segue to address the issue that everyone's talking about, the number of Indian origin CEOs who are running global corporations today, Vasant, you're one of them. When you hear about people talk about this, there's almost this collective sense of ownership. How do you feel about this?
I mean, I think it's amazing on the one hand, and I think a lot of it comes down to why I would think about it is our forefathers and grandmothers and grandfathers who worked so hard to give us the opportunity, give somebody like me the opportunity to be educated in the U.S. and have all of the opportunities that I have. So I always think you stand on the shoulders of giants, and there must have been many giants walking around India, 50, 100 years ago.
If so many of you made it to the top.
It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. So we've never all gotten together to really discuss how it happened, but I certainly know many of the other, and I know they all feel a lot of pride about it.
But why do you think we're seeing this? I mean, yes, we are today we have a large population, but so does China, and yet we don't see Chinese executives making it to the roles of global CEOs heading global corporations. What do you think is specific or unique to why we're seeing this happen?
You know, it's hard to say. I think a few things. I mean, certainly the emphasis on education in Indian communities is so strong. So anywhere in the world Indian communities go, of course, there's such a drive. I even have it with my own children, right? Drive to educate, which I think creates a lot of opportunity then for highly educated individuals. I think also what I observe, at least, is Indians are able to adapt to very different situations. I mean, I'm an ethnically Indian. I was born in Pittsburgh in the United States. I've lived all over the world, and now I'm a CEO of a Swiss company, right? And so you have to be able to adapt, and I think Indians are pretty good at that, and I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I would imagine that does. But let's talk about Novartis and your journey and your mission to create an innovative drug company that you aspire for trust as well as higher multiples. Now, the multiple part of the value part I get, because if you do move towards this innovative pipeline, you hope to extract better multiples from the market. But on the trust aspect, because that has been a challenge for the pharmaceutical industry, if you look at any of the congressional hearings, whether it's in the US or the EU, that continues to be a problem, not just a perception problem, but a very real problem that plagues the pharmaceutical industry. How do you intend to earn trust, and what does that mean specifically from a Novartis point of view?
When you look at the trust journey of this industry, it's gone through ups and downs over the decades. In the 80s and 90s, actually our industry was one of the most respected and trusted industries in the world. We're a little bit of a victim of our success. The more successful we've been at bringing new medicines to market, the more expectations society has had of us. And I don't think we've always been up to the challenge. I mean, I think we have to do better about explaining how we price our medicines and how we try to price the medicines based on the value they create to society, as opposed to always thinking about cost. And I think that's one of the shifts we need to make.
Are you seeing that shift starting to happen, given the kind of backlash that we are seeing, as well as legislative backlash?
I think it is in certain instances, but it works better, of course, when we have highly transformative medicines. Then people really see the value. I think we have to be much more disciplined about explaining the message. And I think when you do that, you can get through. And overall, I would say on balance, if you look over decades, we've been pretty good at this. Otherwise, the industry wouldn't have grown to be $1 trillion plus industry. At the same time, we have to acknowledge the fact it just takes one actor in our industry to do something that's out of step with what societal expectations are, and the backlash comes on the whole industry. And so I think it's just going to take time, consistency, doing things like the things we talked about on tropical diseases and really making access a priority, trying to do the right things on investing in communities. I think if you do those things over time, hopefully we change the narrative. You saw with COVID, when we're able to bring vaccines and diagnostics to the world, very quickly our industry becomes a hero to the world.
Talking about the focused approach that Novartis has embarked on since 2022, and part of that is to exit businesses and spin off Sandoz, exit Roche, and so on and so forth. What's been the big cultural shift that you've also had to make within the organization to bring in this very laser-sharp focus on going up the innovation chain?
You know, when you think about our company, we're a knowledge industry. I mean, we're a knowledge company with knowledge workers. And one of the transitions when I became CEO in 2018, we started on was this idea of an inspired, curious, and unbossed organization. The idea that empowered people make better decisions, they're able to innovate. And that's been the journey we've been on as a company over these last 5 years, with the belief that if you're really pure play innovation, you're all about your people's ability to come up with incredible ideas and translate those ideas into products and services for your customers. And that's the journey we've been on. It's not always been easy, I can say. It's been bumpy along the way, especially when you're doing 100 billion of transactions, spinning companies, divesting things, restructuring. That causes doubt about your commitment to the culture. But I believe in the long run, over decades, for Novartis to be a successful pure play innovator, we've got to get this culture right. It's going to all be about empowered people, inspired to do their work, relentlessly curious about the external world. That's where the innovation comes from.
So how have you unbossed yourself?
Unbossed myself is a really good question. I think unbossed is a lot about personal accountability, you know, and so what we really try to say is instead of waiting for somebody else to tell you what to do, you've got to come up with your own narrative. And I've seen over the time as CEO, there are moments in time you have to find where you say, now is the moment to take the next step. Nobody told me in the first part of last year, let's take the next step in the transformation. Let's exit Roche. Let's spin Sandoz. Let's re-architect the whole Novartis structure globally. That's a moment in time you have to take personal accountability in my role as CEO and make the transformation happen.
But you know, this requires courage as well, because there are going to be questions asked, and there will be perhaps doubts, as you pointed out as well. How do you sort of find that confidence and the courage within to say, I am going to move ahead with this? Because in the short term, it might have, a different outcome.
I think a lot of this, for me at least, personally, is from the Indian heritage of growing up and learning about meditation, learning about exercises like yoga and pranayama, looking inside yourself to find an inner peace that allows you then to be courageous, because in a lot of ways then the psychological security you build inside your own mind. I mean, I really believe what my grandparents in the end taught me, which I didn't appreciate, I have to say, 20, 30 years ago, really comes back now, because that's where you find the strength. You won't find the strength from the external world, because rightfully reporters and investors will criticize and challenge. You have to find that strength from within. And they gave me those tools when I was a child and adolescent, and now I use those tools today as a global CEO.
But as you look at the journey today, you started this in 2022, where do you believe you find yourself in being able to execute?
Well, we actually started, if you go back, even in 2018. So we exited then the consumer health business.
GSK.
We spun Alcon. So we've had a long journey. I do think now we're getting to the point where, at least from my mind, the structure of Novartis is the right one. We are one of the largest, if not the largest, pure play innovative medicines company in the world. Operations in over 100 markets. We, in our innovative portfolio, reach almost over 250 million patients. We're in these 5 therapeutic areas. We have the right technology platforms. And now it's all about, in the next years, executing to showing we can consistently get great medicines out and get them to as many patients as possible. And then I think the multiples, the valuation, the financial performance will follow. So we really shift now, let's say in my second 5 years as CEO, from a transformation story to an execution story. And that's what we need to deliver on over the coming years.
MCX presents a new cotton futures contract.